Welcome to the City of Plano's virtual WaterWise landscape tour, presented by Live Green in Plano and with your guide, Albert. Today, we're showcasing Michelle Masucci's exquisite landscape. Michelle's yard shows that miniature spaces can most certainly be magical. This native Texan has enjoyed being in the garden since she was a little girl, so she sure knows her Texas tough plants. Her yard may be small, but it sure packs a punch. We know you'll enjoy this gem of a tour with its tasty treats and tame turtles. That's right! Before we take our tour though, let's get oriented. Located in north central Plano near Carpenter Park, the front of her home faces south. As Michelle lives in a patio home community, the front yard is largely maintained by the HOA and receives sun. A zero lot line property, the east side yard is narrow and receives shade and sun. The backyard receives shade and sun as well, just enough of the latter for Michelle's integrated edible and flower garden to thrive. Because the HOA maintains the community's front yards, our tour will focus primarily on the east side yard and the backyard. Though they're small, they're full of color, diversity, and DIY magic. Let's meet the homeowner, shall we?
Hello, my name is Michelle Masucci. Welcome to my habitat. My husband Michael and I have lived here for 34 years in the same house. We moved to Plano from Houston, and we have enjoyed watching things change over the years. One thing that has not changed in our small space here, our humble abode, is that always the same thing. We want something easy to keep, use what resources we have without getting too overwhelmed with things. But it always changes a little bit at a time over the years, and will continue to change, I'm sure. We've always taken part in the City of Plano's anything from the rain barrel sales to the tree giveaways to the soil, irrigation, everything. Always taken part in those classes and have always gotten a lot of information that way. Have taken part in this when my daughter was young in elementary school. Did a lot of work for one of the elementary schools in their discovery gardens, and thoroughly enjoyed it over the years.
One Texas tough plant that Michelle thoroughly enjoys is her lantana. Check out these shots from over the years. Its blooms are magnificent, and it loves its sunny spot in one of few areas of the front yard not maintained by the HOA.
My favorite plant would be probably the lantana in the front yard, only because it's become like a landmark in the neighborhood. It was a gift in a hanging basket many years ago, and we had lost a tree there in that flower bed, so I needed something to go in that flower bed, and I planted this little hanging basket of lantana, and it has become a monster. And people stop, and it usually blooms beautifully. Some years better than others, but it never ceases to amaze me how big it's gotten.
As you approach the gate to the east side yard, you're greeted by two stylish planters bursting with seasonal color. Michelle said it's good luck to plant rosemary outside your front door. Plus, it smells delightful. Maybe it's the rosemary, but we think it's hard work and lots of love that have filled this yard with life. Through the gate, you find yourself on an idyllic stamped concrete pathway underneath the shade of crepe myrtles. You note several dappled light lovers lining the curve of the pathway, like liriabe, blooming purple in mid-October. And speaking of purple, the purple oxalis. This blooming ground cover does well in the shade, and its shamrock-like deep purple foliage adds rich color and texture. Michelle has an eye for design, and it's evident in her styled vignettes of muted artwork and found objects like rocks and shells from her family's travels. This is a peaceful spot that always feels lush, and you might have spotted something that helps Michelle keep it that way, irrigation-free. This rain barrel blends beautifully with the area's aesthetic. It allows Michelle to fill her watering can and easily hand water her many patio plants. Container gardening is a great place to begin if you're a new gardener. To Michelle, arranging containers is art, and her arrangements are stunning. They vary seasonally, but we love her current use of tropical and succulent plants and how she's staged them to provide a fabulous nature-filled view from the entire east side of her home, including the kitchen and living room, adding so much aesthetic value to this zero-lot line property.
Some of the challenges we have in our yard is that it is a zero-lot patio home, which means our patio basically bumps up against the side wall of the next house. So we basically only have a very tiny front yard and a side yard and a backyard, so we have no other side. So when you're a prolific gardener, it's hard to stop. It's hard to stop gardening. So you don't have as much room as a lot of traditional homes. But pots help that. You can always go plant up and plant in pots, and it takes away some of the stress of not having all the room you may want.
Michelle always makes the best of her small space, and her design appeals to all the senses. We love the element of sound that her fountain adds. Michelle drops a mosquito dunk into the water every month to minimize breeding chemical-free. Trickling water is a treat for anyone relaxing on the patio, and Michelle's family certainly enjoys doing so. But the area hasn't always been this inviting. In fact, it was formerly a redwood deck that Michelle and Michael worked to salvage until it was time for a change.
Well, the deck was always, at first, I thought it was an asset. But then we quickly learned that the owner before us had painted the deck, and it got terribly worn looking, and so we actually turned the deck, and that lasted for a few years, and then it just got so shabby looking. We decided to take it up and there was also a spa sunken in the deck, which was a money pit. So we took that out and took the deck out, filled in the hole where the spa was, and we had a professional concrete printer come and lay the patio, and it was probably one of the best things we ever did. It lowered our patio at least 8 inches or more because of course the deck was raised, and it got rid of multiple problems with critters living under the deck, and it just gave a more pleasant atmosphere. It wasn't as I don't know, it was just shabby looking. The deck got to be shabby looking. So I've always been pleased with the stamped concrete. We could have gone with the natural stone, but this is a little easier to keep clean, and it was just a lot easier it stays in one place. It doesn't shift like the natural stone would have. So we've always been pleased with that.
But this DIY and creative reuse queen wasn't going to let those planks go to waste.
I had saved a lot of the 8-foot planks for years underneath my car in the garage, and with always the intent to make something out of them. And finally I did. I made a table, a patio table, and I'll have to say it turned out rather nice. I mounted the top onto an old sewing machine stand, and I'm really proud of that. So I kept a piece of history from our yard, and I still have some left. So I plan to make maybe another planter or something to go with it.
As you continue down the east side yard, you're reminded that Michelle not only built a wonderful table, but she also built a habitat for wildlife.
My backyard is a certified wildlife habitat. Um, you can imagine some of the wildlife, I'm sure, from your own yard: squirrels, possums, bobcats, uh, all of those good things. But I also have box turtles that roam freely. We started out with one. She's called Big Mama, and she's about the only one I can actually put a name to anymore. I've seen 9 at one time. This has been over probably a 20-year span. She was the first, and all of a sudden we had 5 more, and we don't know how we got 5 more, but she obviously had eggs when she moved into our backyard. We since have had small ones, medium-sized ones over the years, but right now we have about 9 adults, and they are about maybe 5 inches in diameter. And they're a hoot to watch. They all have personalities, but they hibernate over winter. And then we have multiple bees, birds, anything you can imagine come through this yard.
The turtles love to eat some of the family's fruit and vegetable scraps. We'll call it chomposting. Whoever said that turtles are slow? This one is ready to continue our tour into the backyard, where Michelle does her composting. She composts waste like coffee and tea grounds, eggshells, and grass clippings, returning nutrients to her soil. Heading toward the backyard, you'll find additional stylish containers. Some add pops of color, some are somewhat unusual, and others even yield tasty treats, like this fig tree. Michelle enjoyed eating its fruit over the summer. Her daughter did too, and she even got a little creative with the harvest. Step into the backyard and glorious fall colors draw your attention to the integrated edible and flower garden in the middle. Michelle's unique design is a perfect circle, intentionally and attractively capturing the single sunny spot for plants that need it the most. Michelle loves cutting seasonal bouquets here to bring joy to the patio and the kitchen. This garden is a superb example of integration, or interplanting herbs, vegetables, and flowers. It's how nature would grow, and it's a helpful one-stop shop for pollinators who can't seem to get enough of those zinnias. Even this green anole lizard is a happy camper. Can you spot its silhouette? And Michelle is a happy camper when she's rescuing plants from the last chance rack at the nurseries, another kind of rescue mom. This croton, now thriving, arrived home with only a handful of dull leaves. She also adores planting and harvesting vegetables year-round. Let's learn more.
I've always had a vegetable garden since I was a child, and I don't think I could ever be without some sort of a container garden or raised bed, or any place I live without raising some sort of vegetable. It is the shape and the size it is right now because that's exactly how much sun I get in my backyard. So I wanted to utilize every inch, as well as companion gardening. I believe in integrating everything together. I think they grow better, and it's just more attractive to look at, like a traditional flower bed, only with edibles of all sorts. And you get all sorts of critters, and hopefully I can contain those with just the bad critters with the good critters. So so far it's worked to go organic, and I plant all year round and always have something in the garden to eat, whether it's vegetables, the lettuce this time of year, and pak choi and kales, that kind of thing. But all year round we have at least 1 or 2 things to use from the garden.
So what's going from the garden to the kitchen in mid-October? Okra, and lots of it. Michelle built this raised bed over the summer. The okra was quick to grow tall but slow to produce. Once it got going though, she's been able to harvest daily. Michelle loves her fried okra, but what are her favorite vegetables to grow?
Root crops are my actual favorite, absolute favorite to grow in the garden. Carrots in particular. I don't know what it is about pulling those carrots out of the ground. It is just fascinating to me. Beets are the second most favorite, but I don't have really good luck. Some years I do, some years I don't. But carrots you can plant in the spring, early spring, and also this time of year in the fall. And sometimes in the fall you have to leave them a little longer than you'd want to, and you'll have to cover them because they will be sensitive to the cold. But just leave them in the ground and they'll do fine. And be sure to thin them out because that makes a big difference in how they turn out. And spinach also. Spinach you can plant along with the beets, and if the beets don't come out the way you want, you can always use the leaves for the salad.
Get started on your own vegetable garden with our vegetable gardening webinar. Other seasonal treats include a rainbow of various tomatoes, tiny tangy strawberries, and potatoes. In fact, Michelle built this raised planting area over the summer as well. She dubbed it Tater Town, as it's soon to host tubs of tubers. We're sure you're hungry now, but let's not forget about the other plants that Michelle enjoys in the backyard. Outside of the center circle, there's primarily shade. A beautifully shaped vitex contributes to the shadows and conveniently hangs over the bench, a nice resting spot while planting. This fast-growing ornamental tree features showy lavender flowers throughout the summer. Here it is bustling with bees earlier this year. You'll find bugleweed underneath the vitex, a lovely blooming ground cover that pops up between paving stones, its evergreen leaves like a perennial mat.
My potted Japanese maples are my favorite plant in the backyard. They are, I've had them since they were very small, maybe 12 inches tall, and they have grown and prospered in their pots through thick and thin. They're left out all year long. They look straggly in the wintertime, but they never cease to amaze me in the spring with their bright red leaves and just their overall peaceful look. I love that look. So those are my favorites in the back as far as potted plants. And I also have two large ponytail plants that have been with me for almost 40 years. And I'd bring them in. I have to bring them in every year, however, and they're a little more sensitive to the weather, but I love them dearly, and I've even named them, so they're part of the family.
So how does Michelle water all of these lovely plants?
Back here in the backyard with the vegetable garden, I have attached drip irrigation to one of the heads, and it takes care of the whole garden. When the sprinklers come on, it doesn't water from the top, which is bad for most vegetables to get water on their leaves. So, but the rest of the yard has the original in-ground sprinkler system. I don't use it very often. I still hand water a lot of things, most things actually. I just have this philosophy: if it doesn't grow well with the regular what water we get, then I'm not going to take the time and the energy and waste the water by overwatering when you don't need it.
A device that keeps her sprinklers running only when weather conditions call for them is a rain and freeze sensor. It's an easy addition to an irrigation system. In fact, you could earn a rebate for your own first-time installation. Michelle also makes good use of 5 rain barrels throughout the yard. That's hundreds of gallons, conveniently located for hand watering. 3 of them are even chained together for added storage, and they're turtle approved. As dusk sets in and the moonflowers bloom, it's time to say so long for now, but boy, are we glad we stopped by to see this miniature space that offers a whole lot of WaterWise magic. We'd like to sincerely thank Michelle for sharing her yard and you, our viewers, for following along. We've referenced many plants and resources throughout our tour, and we invite you to learn more. Visit plano.gov/landscape tour for a corresponding plant list specifically for the Masucci yard. Visit plano.gov/seed programs and click Learn Online to watch our recorded webinars. From your friends at Live Green in Plano, thank you for viewing the virtual WaterWise landscape tour.